I just flew in from Washington, D.C. I was invited to come back yesterday, kind of on a spur of the moment request to meet with Speaker Boehner and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. I was there along with my friend from Tennessee, Bill Haslam, the governor of Tennessee. I, as you know, are the incoming chair of the NGA, and Bill is the chairman of the Republican Governors Association. And so we had an opportunity to spend about an hour with the leadership of the Senate and the House. It was a great opportunity for us to talk about states, federalism, the concept that we are a good resource for this new Congress to help them. They seem to recognize the need to have more input from the states and the governors, which I very much applauded and very much appreciated. They also seem to recognize that with the new change of leadership in the Senate, particularly in the House, that they needed to get some things done and wanted to rely upon the governors to help them with their agenda, to find out what the states' concerns were and what we could do to help. And so it was a productive meeting. While I was there, I also met with Paul Ryan, who's over the House Ways and Means Committee. Again, he's become a good friend of Utah and appreciates the successes we're having here in Utah. He understands fiscal prudence and likes the fact that Utah has been a very fiscally prudent state. I also spent some time with Senator Lamar Alexander and Senator Barrasso from Wyoming, talking about public lands and also some other issues like Market Street fairness and the issue of remote sales, and an issue that's been ongoing for about 15 years, which this year they hope to resolve and get a solution to. So it was a very productive meeting from my perspective. It was very fast. I came back this morning and now I'm here. So again, I expect that things have not burned down to the ground since I've been gone here at the legislature. Everything seems to be intact and moving forward. So with that, you may have some questions for me.
Speaking of burning down, Governor, you at one point directed your administration to kind of alert the Utah public about wood burning issues. And it seems like the UDAQ has pulled back a little bit on that, given the pushback from the public. What have you directed your administration to do on that specific issue?
Well, as you recall, I raised the issue a year ago in my State of the State address as we talked about air quality issues and what could we do to improve the air quality. And I suggested that we ought to take a look at least one aspect of that puzzle as far as restrictions, regulations on wood burning, particularly for stoves and fireplaces, basically prompted by a study that came out of the University of Utah that showed that burning for 1 hour of wood in a stove or in a fireplace was the equivalency to having an automobile drive down to St. George and back as far as the pollution it put in the air. I didn't put any specific proposal out, but we ought to take a look at wood burning restrictions, and particularly during red days. What we have found out with the Air Quality Board when they put out their proposal was that it certainly struck a chord with people. It's almost like a civil right to be able to burn wood. And the concern that maybe it was too overreaching and far-reaching in the perspective of the public. At least that's what they said when they showed up to the Air Quality Board meetings. And the Air Quality Board, that's why you have public meetings, is to kind of get the sense of the body and see what the feelings are out there. It does appear that they've said, you know what, we're going to maybe pull back and relook at this. I think the concerns that the public had need to be addressed. Are we too broad? They were talking about going from November to March. Our inversion period is really from December 15th to the middle part of February, so about 60 days. So they were maybe a little too broad. It was extending into areas where we did not have non-attainment issues, and so that may be too broad that way. And there's clearly concern about those who rely upon wood as their sole source of heat, that somehow they would not be able to burn, and for those on emergency conditions, that somehow they would be in violation of the law. The other thing we found out, which is kind of interesting, is that we find out that people aren't obeying the current law. And that is that we have restrictions already on red days to not burn. And so the question is going to be, can we do this voluntarily? Is it too hard to enforce? The argument from the Air Quality Board is for a little bit of money we can have a lot of difference in the air quality by eliminating wood burning. And so I think they just need to go back and take a look at it and see, maybe work with the stakeholders out there and see if we can find some middle ground that would make sense to everybody. But I don't think the issue is dead, but I think they're certainly going to pull back on their broad spectrum of approach that they proposed to the public.
But do they need to do more? Do they need to have a ban? Or are you saying still that they need to?
I think restrictions, whether they be voluntary, which would be the best, if we could have voluntary compliance with banning of wood burns in stoves or fireplaces during red days, would certainly be a major step towards us having cleaner air.
Governor, there's a bill introduced in the House that combines religious liberty with protections for the, anti-discrimination protections overall. Have you had a chance to take a look at that bill? Is that what you want to see, a single piece of legislation going forward on those issues now that they've been raised?
Well, I think they have to be done at least in concert. If that means combining two issues into one bill, that's fine with me. In fact, I think that would be probably the best way to do it. I think we need to find, the appropriate balance between religious freedom, rights to express your religious freedom and your conduct and what you say and do, with, in fact, anti-discrimination, certainly for the gay community, which is the issue, it's like threading the needle because they do kind of bump up against each other, and I think that we need to find that balance and work with all stakeholders to find that balance. And if we can't find the balance, then my prediction is we won't have a bill.
Do you think the bill needs to spell out that it's anti-discrimination protections for the LGBT community? This particular bill does not, and it's raising some concerns.
Well, and I haven't seen the bill to look at the language. It kind of came out when I was in Washington yesterday, but it doesn't matter to me as long as we get the right end results. But I certainly, if we need to spell out LGBT to make sure that the gay community knows that they are part of all of Utah, that Utahns we're trying to avoid discrimination on, that doesn't cause me any heartburn.
How urgent is it to you that we get something done on this session?
I think it's urgent may not be the right term, but I think it certainly is timely, not only for Utah, as we've gone through the change with the laws and same-sex marriage and all this debate and discussion. We have 20 cities that have already got some anti-discrimination ordinances on the books. And so it would seem like to me that now is a great time to do this. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but I think now is a good time. I think we ought to get ahead of the curve on this and pass an appropriately balanced religious freedom law, as well as anti-discrimination for the gay community and all Utahns. And so I think now would be great. Whether it passes or not is an urgency. I don't know that I'd go that far, but I think now it really is a good time to do it. I think not only can we do it for Utah, but I think it becomes a model for the rest of the country.
Do you think religious freedom, religious liberty should be able to be used as a defense in civil or even governmental actions against alleging discrimination?
Well, again, there is the problem. The devil in the details kind of a scenario. There are so many different examples out there of, well, what if we do this, and what if you're making cakes and somebody wants to put on a swastika, or somebody wants to have flowers delivered to the Westboro church, which I think most people think is a little bit extreme. Somebody might want to say, you know what, that violates my religious beliefs. And so I don't want to do that. You shouldn't have to compel me to do it. So that's the debate. I'm not saying there's an easy answer there. That's the problem. It is a challenging thing. It's not just about gay rights or anything else. It's about when do you cross the line in my own personal, view of what I think is right or wrong based on my own religious persuasion, and when does that get impacted by, well, but we can't use that as some tool to discriminate against somebody else. So it's a tough issue. I think everybody on all sides of this understands this is a tough issue. It's going to take some, I think, compassion on both sides, some compromise. It's going to take some wisdom. It's going to take some methodical thought to get us to where we want to be. And they need to be compatible. And that means finding the appropriate balance. I'm confident the legislature can do that. But if they can't do it, then my belief is we will have no bill for either side.
The Senate is emphatic they will not pass one without the other. If that is the case, or if one does get passed without the other, would you veto religious liberties if there's no non-discrimination bill?
You know, I don't want to presuppose what's going to come out of the bill, but I would be very disappointed if I had a bill for religious freedom that did not include anti-discrimination. And where that rises to the level of veto, I guess we'd need to see, but I would be very unhappy.
Governor, what do you see as your role in this? You've been active in some of the other big issues this year, Medicaid, members of your executive office team have been involved in prison issues and criminal justice reforms. How are you involved in this one?
Well, again, in many ways, I'm a conduit for information and facilitate, discussion. My approach has been historically to work with the legislature to make sure they get the bills right so that I don't have to veto the bill. And we've been very successful at working with legislators that start out maybe in a pathway that is uncomfortable for me, and we've worked with them and said, this is maybe a bill that will be vetoed if you don't make some changes. So we very, carefully and with great respect to the legislative process, try to insert our views in there so that we can get it right. We listen to stakeholders and express their views. It's a collaborative effort. The legislature has to create the legislation, and they get public input to do that and come up with, legislation that ends up getting into my desk, and I can do one of three things: sign it, or veto it, or let it go into law without my signature. And I take those three responsibilities very seriously, and we'll be involved with this discussion and see if we can't make sure we can navigate this and hopefully, as I say, thread the needle.
Have you had any behind-the-scenes discussions with legislative leaders on this issue?
Yes,
How have those gone?
those are going well. I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll be able to come up with a good bill, that both sides will say it's not everything we wanted, but it's something that we can build upon.
Would you or have you officiated a gay wedding?
I have not officiated a gay wedding.
Would you, or would you consider that a violation of your religious beliefs?
I haven't even thought about whether I would do it or not. I'm a government official. I have responsibilities, but usually when people ask me to do it, it's, would you mind doing it? It's a favor of a friend, or I'm not obligated to do it. It's not like a clerk or somebody else that has a government responsibility. I just have the ability to perform a marriage. I would probably respectfully decline, and it's not something I would want to do. But it doesn't mean that other people aren't there available to do it. And again, because I have no government obligation, I think it would be very appropriate for me to say no.
Governor, the LDS churches, we all know, came out at the beginning of the session and suggested what they thought would be the proper path on this type of legislation, combining anti-discrimination with protection of religious liberties. In the end, was it helpful that they came out, or has that maybe made it more difficult to come to a good conclusion on these issues?
Well, in some ways it helps. In some ways it complicates the matter, I think, here with our legislature. I think for a lot of legislators it was a matter of, we don't need to deal with this right now. There's still yet to be heard from the Supreme Court. There's other issues out there pending, and so let's wait for those to be realized and then maybe take up that issue. This has maybe made it a little more timely. I think there's wisdom in actually addressing the issue and not kicking the can down the road. It's easy for legislators, just as a body, and whether it's Utah or any other state or Congress, to postpone making tough decisions. So this kind of prompts us to say, now's the time. I believe now is the time. So let's deal with the tough issues and find the right solution.
The Senate committee will talk about a gas tax increase this afternoon. You said the door is open. I think that was your quote. Will you support the House doesn't like a gas tax increase, or likes it less. Do you support a gas tax increase?
I do support, let me say that again. I do support the responsibility we have to make sure we have appropriate funding for our transportation. And as we look at the numbers we have today, where we have not increased the gasoline tax for 17 years, just the loss to inflation, the purchasing power we've lost over that period of time, is about 10 cents a gallon. So it would seem very appropriate that we ought to at least recapture that amount of money in a gasoline tax. Now, and when I say that, I also recognize there's more than one way to skin the cat. The House is more inclined to look at maybe some kind of sales tax or some kind of indexing. And so both ideas are viable. And maybe there's a combination of both of them will have to come to pass to get it past both bodies. But clearly we need to have an adjustment in how we fund transportation. And I think this is the time to do it now. I think, again, I think for a lot of reasons, this is the session to have that discussion and to actually do something. So gasoline tax increase, sales tax adjustment, indexing, all of those are areas that I could support.
Representative Jim Dunnigan says that he is skeptical of Healthy Utah. He says he would, in 5 minutes, were his words, pass a program that extended Medicaid up to, or extended Medicaid up to 100% and not above poverty, and let the people above 100% go on the exchange. He indicated that you asked for such a proposal from the Obama administration and were turned down. Would you talk about that?
Yes, that was a proposal that actually we talked about a year ago, probably more than a year ago when the idea was first thought about. And we proposed it twice to the Obama administration. It's been requested again since that time by us, so at least on no less than 3 occasions we've made formal requests. Would you be willing to let us just go to 100% of poverty and give us the same split that comes with the full expansion? We right now, as you know, we are at a 70-30 split for up to 100% of poverty. The new program that's come out of the Affordable Care Act is a 90-10 split when you get to its away from the 100% they give you now, and then it gradually steps down and finishes at 90-10. We said, how about if we take the 90-10 split and just do up to 100% of poverty? We've been turned down on that at least 3 times over the last over a year period of time, as well as other states. It would resolve many of the issues for many states if they would do that. That doesn't seem to be on the table. The Obama administration has said, one, we believe this should have been mandatory anyway. That's how they proposed the bill in Congress, so that 0 to 133%, which translates to be 138%, is going to be mandatory. It was the Supreme Court decision which said that this made this expansion voluntary, but the tax is mandatory. That's created this kind of strange environment. And the Obama administration says that's a non-starter for them. That's not, and again, they've turned us down 3 times as a state of Utah, and other states have tried the same thing.
They say they believe in insuring everybody, and they may end up with 15,000 people here. Are you going back and saying to them, or are you letting the best be the enemy of the good?
We've used that same phrase, Rod, saying, look, this is not perfect, and we need compromise on your part to get the state of Utah to feel like that we're winning. They've tried to give us maximum flexibility. They've let us incorporate a work program into this, so when you sign up for Healthy Utah, you are automatically enrolled into a work program to help us get you off of government assistance. They feel like they've given what they are willing to give. We will continue to try for more flexibility over time. I expect over the next couple of years there might be some opportunities with the flexibility that's built into the Affordable Care Act. But as of right now, we have what we have, and it's the most flexible program given to any state in America today.
You mentioned that you discussed public lands on your recent trip to D.C. How important is it that Utah be working with other states? Other states have been a little reluctant to join the compact that Utah floated last year. How important is the other state?
Well, through our Western Governors Association, that you know I'm the past chairman of, we've had a lot of discussion on the public lands. It's unique. I've met with the president on a number of occasions, and the public lands are things that are a little bit foreign to anybody, east of the Rockies. I mean, they just don't have them. And if you've seen the map, and I know you all have, you see that the public lands really are here in the west, the Intermountain West. And so it's a situation that's kind of out of sight, out of mind for many on the East Coast. We are talking in terms of PILT payments, payments in lieu of taxes. I was disappointed that the president in his previous budget did not have any money in there for payments in lieu of taxes for the public lands. And yet, in some instances, that's 1/3 to 40% of some of our counties' budgets, not just in Utah, but in other states. So the public land management and how we pay for the management of those public lands is an issue that sometimes is forgotten back in Washington, D.C. So it's a matter of, endangered species, it's a matter of wildfire management, it's a matter of natural resource extraction. It's a concern for us in the West where we, in fact, are having a challenge, particularly right now with the oil prices dropping down because of increased domestic production in America, mostly on private lands, I might add. And so our environment here economically in the basin, down in Carbon, Emory counties, again, with some of the changes that are being made, makes it more difficult for coal, makes it more challenging for natural gas and oil, and we're losing market share now. And some of it comes with the red tape involved with dealing with the public lands. It takes us about 1.5 years to get a permit on a public land to drill, where in North Dakota, it takes about 3 months.
I meant specifically about the ownership issue, the retaking the lands, and getting other states involved.
Well, our emphasis right now is really on the public land initiative that Rob Bishop is doing. I think that's a template for others where we need a legislative fix. I think that's the best way to do it as opposed to litigation. I've always said there's 3 arrows in the quiver when it comes to public lands. Negotiation, which we try to negotiate and work compatibly with the BLM and the Forest Service and Interior. And there's also then legislation, which really is how a lot of these things should be done. And so we applaud Congressman Bishop and Congressman Chaffetz on this public land initiative specifically for Utah. And the last one is litigation. All 3 arrows are in our quiver and all will be used as is appropriate. Other states applaud the efforts of Utah. I've worked with all the governors. They have some of the same kinds of concerns in Nevada and Wyoming, Idaho, Arizona, that we have here in Utah. So it's not unique just to Utah. We're sometimes a little more vociferous about this. We've been involved for a period of time about this issue. But we have support with the other governors that are saying we want to be with you, and we're trying to have a united voice on a common sense approach to how you manage the public lands.
Governor, there are several bills out there that would modify or change what was passed last year's SB 54. Do you think it's a good idea to push the implementation of that bill back until 2017?
I think the legislature, in their attempts to protect and preserve the convention caucus system, put their best foot forward. It may be imperfect. It may not be exactly what everybody wants, but I think they, in good faith, came up with a proposal. And I've sat through a 3-hour presentation by Senator Bramble and Representative Dan McKay in talking about, in an effort to preserve the convention caucus system that we have in Utah, they thought Senate Bill 54 was absolutely a necessity. And I think in good faith, the legislature came to the forefront and passed the bill. That's why I signed it. I think it is constitutional. I think we need to go on with business. That being said, I know there are people outside that have a different point of view. That's why there's potential litigation out there, and that will bring clarity. But we don't need to wait. I think we need to move ahead, and whatever happens with the court case. I think that's certainly an appropriate way to bring clarity to that issue. I don't think there's any need to delay anything.